Okay, well, the 8 can't wait is not going to dismantle systemic racism in law enforcement because we recruit from a society that's not perfect, and our policy dictates that, okay, you have to treat all people the same. You have to treat everybody with courtesy and respect. But I've worked with racists that have told me, hey, I don't like black people, partner. And I'm like, well, hey, I don't like white people that don't like black people. But tonight we got to watch each other's back. Yeah, that's right, partner. I'm watching your back. And we've gotten into scuffles and situations where, that those officers have protected me and vice versa. So racism has been around since the beginning of time, whether it's because of a person's skin color or because of a person's position. We just have to, if you're going to recruit from the human society, if you're going to recruit imperfect people, you cannot create a policy that's going to eliminate that imperfection. Wait. Hold on. I'm talking about the imperfection of racism. You can create a policy that'll keep that person from displaying and acting on his racist behaviors. But what you have to also, but
that's what we're talking about. I'm talking about the system. See, I'm not talking about the individual.
Well, the system is not just law enforcement. The system is the court system. The system, so if
the system, it begins on the street, that cop walking the beat, and it goes and extends all the way up through into the court system, into the incarceration system. That's the system, but it starts with individuals, because at the end of the day, we're dealing with how individuals apply themselves within the system and to the system. Mm-hmm. So my question is about how, just what you said, how do you get those people who might be racist to not impart their racism and plug it into the system and therefore perpetuate it?
Okay,
I'm out.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Sterling.
Sterling. I appreciate your interaction, man.
Yep. Same here, Erin.
Thank you. We will talk again soon, my friend.
All right. Bye-bye.
So, Kevin, it's just going to be me and you, but I have a couple of questions since I let Sterling have so much time with you.
Not a problem. Not a problem.
I do understand exactly what you're saying. You can't change someone's heart. If they're racist, they're racist. But I do understand what he was trying to say, too, that there can be certain policies that are put in place that curb racist behavior and curb, a bias or abusive or misuse of police power. So I want to, because where you and I left off, we kind of got into Rodney King, and then we were on Elijah. Mm-hmm. There was something very interesting to me that you said when we were talking about Rodney King, and you said when Sterling brought up, how those, because I remember I was there, but I don't have a vivid memory of the tape. I just remember it felt like several officers just beating him over and over again. And what you said was that was their training. My issue with that is, what I remember is he seemed subdued. That there were several men, I felt like, obviously, that you didn't need the number of men beating him that much. Where does it come into play? And especially with this kid, Elijah, where the force, and then, of course, George Floyd, which I know you said you don't agree with, where the force you were using is too much. It is over and above the situation. It is over and above what is warranted for that situation. Because that, to me, if that is the training, then that training is inherently wrong, because it just caused the murder of George Floyd. It caused the murder of this young man, Elijah McCain. So the force that they used on him was too much. The force that they used on George Floyd was too much. And in my belief, the force that they used on Rodney King was too much. But I'll give you some space to speak on that.
Okay. 3 different situations. The last 2 that you mentioned, as far as Mr. Floyd and Mr. McClain, are current situations in which department policies and uses of force have had changed and are changing. In responding to that, Sterling had said something about training just being, stagnant. Law enforcement in-service training is a constant thing. I mean, you go to it multiple times a year in a host of different areas. With that being said, the Rodney King situation was that they wanted him from what I understand, being a police officer at that time, to lie in a prone position with his hands out, or either his hands behind his back and his legs spread. And he never did that. He kept trying to get up. So with that non-compliance based on department policy, then those officers are going to do as they're trained. Now, from that incident, LAPD can no longer use the PR-24, which was the baton that they were using, as a lower level of compliance within the use of force. I think
so you were a police officer on the force during that time. When you saw those tapes, because I'm sure you did, did you feel that that was a warranted use of force? Did you feel like that was excessive at all? That they could have made another decision that perhaps would have been better and could have gotten the result that they wanted?
I can't recollect, and I'm pretty sure whoever was watching this that may have been on the job at that time, I can't recollect if they had tased him or not, and the tasers were ineffective.
Yeah,
I believe they did, because again, I got a lot of gray hair in my memory. But if they utilized the taser, if they utilized any type of hands-on anything, then the next level is the PR-24, and after the PR-24, there's nothing left. I mean, he was unarmed, so it's not like we're going to draw our weapon and shoot him.
right.
But
What is the PR-24? Just so.
Huh?
Explain what the PR-24 is.
Oh, it's a police baton that has a side handle. It's also called a side handle baton. Okay. But so with that being said, there was nothing else other than to use the batons until he complied, that's what the officers did. As horrible and as brutal as that was, that was the policy at the time. Now, would I have done it? If this would have taken place in Jordan Downs or Nickerson Gardens, would I have used that? I don't know. I can't say. I can't speculate. But because I'm not, but because I am a sworn, or was a sworn officer, I understand the civilian observation of something that brutal. And believe it or not, sometimes law enforcement, and I'm not using the Rodney King situation as an example, but sometimes law enforcement is brutal. I've been in some hellacious fights on the West Side with white people and Asian people, as far as them not wanting to go to jail. Mm-hmm. So, but that's not, that doesn't get a buzz or a trend or a bump in the media, and social media and media doesn't want to see that.
Probably because your fight with them didn't lead to their death. Because if your fight with them led to their death, or your use of force was excessive compared to what you were being faced with, I'm sure it would have gotten.
My use of force was excessive. It didn't lead to their death. But Rodney King didn't die either. I'm not talking about the George Floyd or the McClain situation.
That was unwarranted. Are you saying now that
it was excessive, but it was considered reasonable and necessary? And okay. but because it was deemed excessive, I was given more training.
Okay, so and that's really
now and with the McClain and the Floyd situation, yeah, that was excessive. That. I wouldn't have handled it that way.
Well, that was murder. There was no reason. I mean, and what to me, because Sterling also brought up the chokehold, so I want to ask how you feel about that. So the carotid thing that
it's called carotid.
Carotid. I don't know why I keep saying carotid. The carotid hold, is that what it's called?
Yes.
Okay, the carotid hold that cuts off the blood supply to the brain, and what was being done to Floyd. With Floyd, that was a chokehold, correct? So those are two different holds.
Well, it was a knee to the neck. I don't know if it was a pain compliance. I'm not familiar with Minneapolis PD. Mm-hmm. But what I saw, seeing that he was already handcuffed, I saw it basically an abuse of force. I mean, once you hear someone say, "I can't breathe," then immediately you dial it back.
Yeah, and the things that my glasses said that this kid said, which was very, to me, similar to what George Floyd said. He vomited like Floyd. He pleaded. He apologized. He said that he couldn't breathe. And I know you don't know what's in the mind or heart of those officers, but let me ask you this. If there's a situation where you or an officer is subduing somebody and that they're saying those things, and they're saying them, because when I look at the Floyd tape, he was saying them calmly. He was saying he had respect for this officer's humanity while the officer showed no respect for his. He was literally begging and pleading for his life. Even if you think that the use of force is warranted, at that time, isn't there something that kicks in and says this person is docile, he's begging, he's saying that he can't breathe, which means that at any moment he could expire. If I keep up this amount of pressure or force, that I should stop, because I understand that there may be a police policy, but there also has to be a police wisdom where you look at a situation and you assess it and you are a critical thinker and you understand, I am killing this man. He is subdued. Let me stop. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. And with that being said, there's been numerous times when I worked the field where if I saw something that looked like it was excessive, meaning that, okay, the arrestee has been handcuffed and then there's still, a desire to throw punches and kicks, I check it right away, but, that's what that's what happens a lot, but it's just not talked about. There's a perception that, officers allow other officers to get away because of the thin blue line or because of the code. But that's not the instance. Those situations are never found out because the person, never expires. Those situations aren't found out unless the arrestee tries to sue you civilly. And then when you see the video or when you hear independent witnesses say, no, that officer stopped this officer from doing this, that, and the other. But you don't hear about that.
Okay, so I'm glad you brought that up because I do want to ask a question about, as you say, the thin blue line. But before we get there, I want to talk a little bit more about the culture of policing. That he tripped and fell, which he didn't. And when it was brought to their attention, because of course everything now is digital and on video, they amended the statement and the officers got suspended, which is okay. So my question to you, which I find really interesting, is that they did it in the height of protest. They still were bold enough to do this, knowing that people were videotaping what was going on.
Erin, when you had me off screen.
Oh, you didn't hear anything I said?
Your voice was muted.
Oh, okay.
And I was looking at my thing, but yeah, you're all the way up on mine.
Okay, so in the midst of, so I want to talk about the boldness of the culture because I'm really curious, can the culture be changed? Is this just...
Now, were you talking about the guy in Boston?
I'm talking about the guy, I think he was in Buffalo, New York. The older...
Yeah, Buffalo, yeah. Okay, so now let me see if I synopsize what you were saying. Basically, how law enforcement reacted to that person and then showed what appeared to be a lack of any kind of regard for his condition, his medical condition that they created.
But the fact that they did it in the middle of the scrutiny that is on policing now, we're literally looking at officers. I see like a new video every week. So they're being scrutinized right now. There was a global, not just a national rebuke of what happened with George Floyd. There was a global rebuke. And yet still in the midst of that, and this is what really made me question, was reform ever possible? They still did that on video. So I'm wondering, is the culture too toxic to change? Do you think that it is a pipe dream, or do you think that there can actually be some reform when police officers I'm still seeing videos of them misusing and abusing power in the face of all of this scrutiny, in the face of the global rebuke, in the face of the mandate for defund or reformation?
Okay. Let me ask you this, and I'm not being sarcastic. I'm being sincere, and I'm trying to get to a place or to a point in asking you this.
Okay.
Have you ever been on a skirmish line, a law enforcement skirmish line, as far as being a police officer?
Yes, when I served in the force for 10 years. No, absolutely not.
Okay, so you were on a skirmish line, and did you deal with protesters?
No.
Okay. In law enforcement,
I've never been on a skirmish line.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So if those officers were told, okay, there's a protest here, and for what, excuse me, whatever intel that they had to move those protesters back. Well, if that person, because if you notice, he walked up to the officers, I believe, and then they were told to move forward, and they pushed him out of the way. Would I have pushed him that hard? I would have moved him out of the way, though. He probably would have been physically pushed down the line till he got to the end, and then I would have let one of the linebackers, which is our supervisor behind us, deal with the person, or either I would have let him through and he got arrested. But that just depends on what my orders were. Mm-hmm. We don't know what those officers' orders were. So he was pushed, and then if you notice, once he went down and hit his head and he was in the supine position, they stopped for a second, and the supervisor said, "Keep moving, keep moving." Now that
I'll tell you what I saw before you go on, because when I saw it, I did not. I mean, just looking at it, it didn't seem like the police officer pushed him that hard. When I saw him fall to the ground and begin to bleed out, and then I saw police officers look confused, like they didn't know what to do, but they still, 2 or 3, walked past him without doing anything until, like you said, I guess their superior officer came and said, "Keep going, I'll take care of him." So that is a problem, but the bigger problem to me is that they lied about it. They tried to pretend and say he tripped and fell, and he didn't, and then they went back and suspended the 2 officers. See, so that's what I'm saying, that even in the middle of the scrutiny, even in the middle of this, all of us watching and wanting reform or wanting to defund, they still lie. So can this, is this intrinsic to policing? And obviously it isn't, because this is not what you did, but is this so systemic in police culture that this is going to be hard or almost impossible to change?
No, I don't think it's so systemic within the police culture, because not all agencies are like that. That was a specialized unit that was called to deploy that skirmish line. Specialized units are tight knit, very fraternal. That was the choice that unit had made, as far as not to reveal the truth as to what happened. But what needs to happen in those situations is basically, administratively, whether it's via department policy and or judiciously, need to be held accountable. At no time ever are you supposed to lie, while you're a police officer. That's part of the whole integrity aspect of being a police officer. That's part of the public trust. Mm-hmm. So with it being handled swiftly, that's what needs to happen. That needs to happen more often. And when I say swiftly, of course, you have an investigation. The investigation revealed that there was lying on the report. So when I say swiftly, I'm just saying, not have a knee-jerk reaction. Conduct an investigation, come to a legitimate, viable, honest conclusion, and then let those officers deal with the consequences that.
But it seems like these days, the thing that's the police are the cell phones. Like, if we didn't have this level of modern technology and everyone kind of taking things with their phone, that these incidents would go unchecked. And that, I don't know, that George Floyd would have died and the police would have told his family something that probably wasn't true, because that's the way that was going. So
you can't speculate. Based off of Buffalo, you can't speculate with the Floyd situation.
I can say that there are 2 incidents, or several incidents now, where police are not being honest, even in the Breonna Taylor case. But I'm gonna get to that. Before that, okay. I want to continue this discussion about culture and cultural literacy. So this is what I'm interested in now, because will we agree that you can't police someone that you're afraid of?
True.
Because if you're afraid of me, then everything I do is suspect. So then you're putting your own life in danger and mine, because you're always going to be afraid that I'm doing something that perhaps I'm not doing. So when officers are assigned, and I want you to educate me on this, and I'm going to tell you my opinion, to a certain neighborhood, is that how it works? You guys are assigned to a certain area or a neighborhood or community?
There's certain geographical divisions within the city of Los Angeles that make up the city. Okay,
so are officers required to have a certain cultural literacy of that culture, a certain understanding, and where they're not afraid? Or should that be something where officers are not assigned to a certain community unless they have a background in it? Should that be implemented, or is that already something that's even considered?
Okay, you asked me, I think, 3 or 4 questions.
Okay, but they're all the same.
Which one do you want me to answer first?
Okay, are officers required to have a cultural literacy to the neighborhoods or the communities they police?
There's not a requirement. There is a cultural diversity training, but there's not a requirement.
Do you think
Now,
that should be?
now, with that being said, when I was a training officer back in the 90s, when I would have someone that was not of the community or culture over in Watts where I worked, then I made sure every Saturday I would take that individual over to a certain area within the city of Los Angeles, and we'd be on basically foot beat. And we'd get out of the car and this would take place on Saturday mornings. We'd get out of the car, and there were some gentlemen in their 60s and 70s that every Saturday morning they played dominoes for about 2 hours outside of the apartment complex. And so I would have we call them boots, or my probationary officer, the person that I was training. I would have him sit there and they would teach that individual how to play dominoes. And the individual had no idea what this had to do with law enforcement. So after about the third lesson, and we're talking about over a 3-week period, because after each session there would be a conversation. After about the third session, the question would always come up to me, "Sir, what does this have to do with law enforcement?" I said, "Look," if you were listening to what those old gentlemen were saying, they were telling you who was selling dope and where they were selling dope. They were telling you who was breaking into the cars on the watch prior to us. They were giving you all kind of information, but because you were so uptight and apprehensive and thinking, okay, well, I've got to learn how to play dominoes so my training officer will give me a good rating. You have to learn to listen. You have to learn to understand the lines of communication. You have to learn to be comfortable around people that don't look like you. But because of the change in workload and, some of the attitudes of the community now and some of the attitudes of law enforcement in reaction to what's going on politically, to what's going on within the community, that can't be done now, except in the case, I think it's 2 or 3 different divisions where they have community service police, where officers used to do what I did in the late 90s and late 80s and early 90s, where they're out on foot beats, and we're talking about a division of, a squad of about 30 to 40 officers, where they're out on foot beats. They don't wear the typical uniform. They wear a much softer uniform, but they help create programs like the Watts Rams. A good friend of mine, he coaches that. It's a phenomenal. Oh shoot! Hello. Oh, I thought I lost you. It's a phenomenal program that has brought kids from varying neighborhoods, different gang territories. They brought them together, and they've learned how to be a team. They learned how to be a family. In fact, they won the state championship last year. There's the Watts Skills Academy, which deals with basketball. There's writing programs. There's certain philanthropic groups that are run by police officers that help kids get tutoring for school, that help kids get to college. But you don't hear about those things because it doesn't trend in social media. We used to do that in the 80s and 90s all the time. In fact, we challenged, I think, Jordan Downs All-Stars, their basketball team, to a game at Locke High School that was televised on Continental Cable.
What year was that?
That was, huh?
What year was that?
I think that was back in 88 or 89.
Well, I want to say this because the story you just told about, I guess, the young trainee that you took out, I may need you to rejoin the force again.
You ain't got enough money in the world.
More like you, because that is exactly what is needed. We need people who understand that when a police officer is going to be policing a community, he needs to somehow become also a part of that community. At the very least, he shouldn't be afraid of it. It would be smarter to become a part of it and have relationships, you know what I mean, and alliances in that community just for his policing, I imagine. But still, why isn't that, or do you think, it does not seem, and I realize that things may have changed since you were in the force, it does not seem like that is valued anymore.
Well, you have to understand that it's not valued, it's just not publicized. How many times do you see an individual, a person from the community, go to a Watts Rams practice and videotape them practicing and say, yeah, these are kids from a Blood neighborhood, and these are kids from a Crip neighborhood, and these are kids from the barrio, and they're all coming together and they're learning teamwork. They're learning to accept each other in spite of the differences that are there.
note that is that happening now today? Because
No, I said, but what I'm saying, you don't see individuals doing that, and like they do when there's a traffic stop and they think, oh, this officer shouldn't, is just harassing this person because he's writing them a ticket. So the point that I'm making is that you don't hear the positive stories on social media, like from individual citizens, like you do hear the negative and bad stories from individual citizens with their camera phones.
Well, I'm asking you now because we're both on social media, and I'm sure you're still in touch with people who are still working in the force today. Are those things going on today?
Yes, they are. They've been, the Watts Rams have been around for over 10 years.
Okay.
Watts Skills Academy has been around, I think, for 3 or 4 years. The CSP program has been around for, I think, maybe 10 years. Mm-hmm. But again, when you're on social media and you see something positive about the Watts Skills Academy, or even an officer that retired and started his a group called B2G, which is basically Boys to Gentlemen. When you see stuff like that scroll, because I don't know if it's because it's positive or it's because it's not something negative, and we're looking through our negative filters to find those bad things out there. It's ignored.
That's just indicative of the culture. There's very rarely you turn on cable news or find out the positive things in most things because
my question to you is, how do we change that culture? Because if we change that culture, then we'll start to see a balance in the negative side. From the negative side.
If your friend is actually doing this program and you go by and videotape it and put it up, I will share it and I will talk about it, because I would love to see police officers actually on the ground working with especially young men of color and bringing them together, especially in different gangs and in different ethnicities. That would give my heart such joy, because I want to believe this. I want to believe that reform is possible. I want to believe that we won't have to keep seeing videos of young Black men dying or Black men being shot in bed in the safety of their own home, minding their own business. I don't want to see any more videos like that. It's affecting my soul. You know what I'm saying?
Trust me, believe it or not, it affects my soul. It affects me, direly, because I'm from the law enforcement policing culture. But you said you want to see those things, and I challenge you. Scripture says, "Seek and ye shall find." So if I can bring the coaches of the Watts Rams to you, would you interview them like you're interviewing me? If I brought the people that are behind Watts Skills Academy, would you interview them like you interview me? If I brought the gentleman that runs B2G, would you interview that person?
Absolutely.
I even have a close friend who 8 years ago, because I'm also an actor and in the industry, came to me and said, "Hey, I want to get in the industry. I want to do comedy." His name is Aaron Thompson. He's a phenomenal comic. Phenomenal. He headlined at Jimmy Kimmel. Not headlined. He opened at Jimmy Kimmel's Comedy Store for Linnell when she was there last year. So his story is trying to bridge the community and cops through comedy. So it's out there. It's out there. You just have to search for it. But just like you found me that was willing to talk about some of the negative stuff, which I'm willing to be on the hot seat and talk about, you also have to search and find cops that are doing positive things. Okay.
And it's a deal. You bring them to me and I will interview them and I will pump it and pump it up, because I would love to see it. Like I said, my heart needs it. My soul needs it.